So, all of us have gathered here today because we are well aware of the fact that mindfulness can be life-transforming. We have either witnessed it in ourselves or in the lives of those around us. We may have noticed that difficult situations with mindfulness can get easier. We may have noticed that emotions are more easier to recognize, which gives us space to choose how to react to them. We may have noticed that we are more aware of our surrounding environments, that it's easier to find beauty and joy in day-to-day lives. However, for some of us, at times, mindfulness practice can also be difficult. It can be challenging to motivate yourself to practice, and when you actually do, it can be very unpleasant. So that might be because you are having problems with establishing a consistent practice and you only need guidance from your teacher, but it also might be the case that you have unaddressed mental health problems. So in that case, a lot of us have unaddressed mental health problems because we are either not aware of them because we've been having them for such a long time that they are normal to us, or we are not ready to admit it to ourselves and to those around us because we perceive that having mental health problems is a sign of weakness and we are ashamed. In that case, I think it's only important to be bold enough to get for help because there is help out there. But mindfulness really is amazing and it does have the ability to improve our mental health. It is not cure for everything. So to leave it at that, I want to tell you about my journey as a scientist. So I myself practice mindfulness and I experienced some of the benefits that people so often reported that we heard about tonight. And I wondered how deep in the body can the effects of mindfulness be found. I wanted to know what really happens inside our bodies when we practice mindfulness for a long time. So to explore that question, I wanted to look at the gene expression. Now, what is gene expression? So let's start with the gene. So gene is a piece of DNA, a section of DNA. And DNA is inside every cell of our body. The same set of genes is in every cell, but they are not expressed in the same way. So what every gene does is that it produces protein. Proteins get produced from the genes that are inside our cells, and they can leave the cell and travel throughout the body. That's basically all the genes do. They produce protein. And when we say that there is a change in gene expression, it just means that the protein production has increased or decreased. So there is this prevailing societal view that genes are very static, that there is this blueprint that we inherited and that it determines our destiny. But that's actually not the case. So it is true that we did inherit our genes from our parents, and the structure of the genes is always the same. We are born with the same set of genes and we die with them. But the activity of those genes can change depending on our environment. So we are now only beginning to understand what are all the things from our environment that can affect our gene expression. So when we look at mindfulness and other similar mind-body practices such as yoga, tai chi, we found that actually all these practices leave a very similar molecular signature. That means that they actually all decrease the activity of the genes that are involved in inflammation. And that is the opposite of what stress does. Stress increases the activity of genes that are involved in inflammation. Now, what is inflammation? What does that really mean? So that means that the genes that actually produce proteins that cause inflammation in the body, the genes produce less protein. And inflammation is actually a good thing if it is short-lived because it helps us fight infection and injury. But if the inflammation is persistently in our body, that means that our immune system is constantly in the sixth gear when there is actually no physical threat to the body. And that kind of persistent inflammation in the whole body leads to diseases such as neurodegenerative diseases, cardiovascular diseases, arthritis, and many other leading causes of death in our modern lifestyles. and even some psychiatric disorders such as depression or PTSD. So that doesn't mean that the inflammation is the cause of these disorders, but we always find high levels of inflammation in those people who have those conditions. So we found that when people practice mindfulness or other similar interventions, for an amount of only 8 weeks or more, we can find this difference in the expression of the genes that suggests that inflammation gets reduced, and it might potentially reduce our risk for those diseases. Now, what does that, what I really want to say is that it is enough to practice mindfulness for a few weeks, but those effects will disappear when you stop practicing. So that's why it's important to be consistent in your practice. So these effects, all these benefits that we heard today from different people, they penetrate deep within the body and they'll change our cells. They penetrate in our cells and change the activity of our genes. And I just think that's amazing. I think that's all I wanted to tell you, so thank you very much.